The Galactic Preservation Council had one rule that even the most hardened criminals dared not break. Never disturb the Draconians of Epsilon Prime. These magnificent beings, the last of their ancient lineage, were revered across 17 star systems as living monuments to a civilization that had mastered dimensional travel before humanity had discovered fire. Adam checked his datapad for the third time that morning, his breath fogging in the frigid air of the feeding platform. One job. He had literally one job on this godforsaken research station orbiting the sanctuary world, and it was perhaps the simplest assignment in the entire xenobiology division. Feed the dragons their prescribed nutrient paste at 800 hours, document their consumption, and leave. Don't get creative, Director Elena had warned him on his first day, her violet eyes sharp beneath her regulation cap. She was Centaurian, third generation, and had spent the better part of a decade studying the Draconians from a respectful distance. The paste is formulated specifically for their biology. Nothing else. Nothing more. Understood? Adam had nodded then, but 3 months of watching the magnificent creatures mechanically consume their gray, lifeless sludge had worn on him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The dragons weren't what humanity had expected when they'd first made contact with the Council. These weren't the fire-breathing monsters of Earth's mythology. The Draconians were something far more ethereal, their scales shimmering with colors that existed in spectrums humans could barely perceive. They were massive, yes, with wingspans that could eclipse small starships, but there was an intelligence in their eyes that made Adam's chest ache, an awareness, a sadness. He watched as Sovereign, the eldest of the 7 remaining Draconians, approached the feeding station with the same listless gait he displayed every morning. The creature's scales, which should have pulsed with iridescent life, seemed dull, faded. They're dying, Adam had told Elena 2 weeks ago. They're being preserved, she'd corrected, her tone leaving no room for argument. Our analysis shows their vital signs are stable. The paste provides everything they need. Everything they need to exist, Adam had muttered. Not everything they need to live. That conversation had earned him a formal reprimand. Humans, he'd been reminded, were newcomers to the galactic stage. They didn't get to question the Council's methods, especially when it came to matters as sensitive as the Draconian Preservation Project. But Adam was human, and humans had a terrible habit of questioning everything. He'd spent his nights in the station's database, diving deep into restricted files he probably shouldn't have accessed. The Draconians, he'd discovered, hadn't always been fed the paste. Centuries ago, before the Council's humanitarian intervention, they had hunted across dimensional barriers, feeding on pure energy from collapsed stars and the aurora streams of gas giants. They had been warriors, poets, builders of impossible structures that defied physics itself. Then their home system had fallen to a dimensional cascade, and the Council had saved them, relocated them, protected them, reduced them to museum pieces fed on scientifically balanced nutrition that kept them alive but extinguished the fire that made them what they were. Adam looked at Sovereign again, at the way the dragon's claws scraped listlessly against the platform, and made a decision that would either save these creatures or end his career spectacularly. The station's energy core wasn't hard to access if you knew where to look and didn't mind a few radiation warnings. Adam had always been good with his hands, a trait that had gotten him this position in the first place. He worked through the night, modifying one of the feeding dispensers, creating a bypass that would allow him to siphon pure, concentrated energy from the station's power grid. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was probably going to kill him when Elena found out. But when morning came and Adam activated his modified dispenser, something extraordinary happened. The energy cascaded from the nozzle in ribbons of light, crackling and dancing like bottled lightning. Sovereign's head snapped up, those ancient eyes suddenly blazing with an intensity that made Adam step back. The dragon moved with a speed that belied his size, and when he consumed the energy, his roar shook the entire platform. It wasn't a roar of pain. It was a roar of recognition, of remembrance. Within seconds, the other 6 Draconians converged on the platform, their scales beginning to shimmer with colors that hurt to look at directly. They fed on the energy like dying plants finally receiving water, and before Adam's eyes they transformed. "What have you done?" Elena's voice cut through the chaos like a laser. She stood at the platform entrance, her face pale with horror, security personnel flanking her. "What I should have done 3 months ago," Adam said quietly, watching as Sovereign spread wings that now pulsed with dimensional energy. I gave them what they actually needed. You've violated Protocol 7. You've contaminated a preserved species. You've... Elena's words died as Sovereign turned to face them. The dragon spoke, not in words, but directly into their minds, a form of communication the Council had assured everyone the Draconians had lost centuries ago. Thank you, young human. We had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Sovereign's consciousness touched Elena's mind as well, and Adam watched as understanding flooded her features. The dragon shared memories, sensations, the slow death of spirit that came with the Council's preservation, the horror of being kept alive but not allowed to live. When Sovereign withdrew, Elena was trembling. The Council will have both our heads for this, she whispered. Probably, Adam agreed. They watched as the 7 Draconians took flight, their bodies beginning to phase between dimensions, testing abilities they'd been denied for so long. They didn't leave, Adam noted with relief. They circled the station, their joy palpable even from a distance. You know what you've done, don't you? Elena said after a long silence. You've proven that humans can't be trusted to follow simple protocols. Adam turned to her, meeting her eyes. No, I've proven that humans can't be trusted to watch suffering and do nothing, even when we're told it's for the greater good. Even when we're told to mind our place. He paused. Maybe that's exactly why the galaxy needs us. Elena stared at him for a long moment, then did something Adam never expected. She smiled. The Council is going to absolutely hate this, she said, pulling out her communicator. But I suppose someone needs to file the report. And Adam? Yes? Next time you decide to revolutionize xenobiology protocols, maybe give me a heads up first. I could have shown you a much easier way to access the power core. As the Draconians danced across the stars, reborn and radiant, Adam couldn't help but laugh. He'd had one job and he'd spectacularly failed to do it the way he was supposed to. But watching Sovereign soar past the observation window, scales blazing with life renewed, Adam knew he'd done exactly what he was meant to do. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as newcomers, uncertain and often dismissed. But perhaps that was their strength. They hadn't learned the Council's careful indifference yet. They still remembered that some rules were meant to be broken, especially when breaking them meant choosing life over mere existence. The dragons had been dying under the Council's care, preserved like specimens in amber. It had taken a human, with his one simple job and his inability to accept that good enough was ever truly good enough, to set them free. And across the galaxy, other species watched the footage from Epsilon Prime and wondered, what else had the Council gotten wrong? What other preserved species were merely being kept alive rather than allowed to truly live? The humans, it seemed, were going to be a problem. And for beings like the Draconians, that was the best news they'd heard in centuries.